So one of the things you often see in programming code, usually, but not always, but often inside a function, is an if statement. Now, you may have seen something similar to this in Microsoft Excel or in Google Sheets or something like a spreadsheet package. And it basically is just seeing if a condition is or isn't true. So in Excel, you might have something like if X is greater than 5 or something along those lines, then what do you do next, and what do you do if it isn't true? And it works the same way in code. So I've set up um, a simple little scenario at the moment where you can see I've set a variable for someone's height to be 1 meter. So when you go to the fairground, quite often there's a little placard on the side of a ride that'll say got to be certain height in order to safely go on this ride. So we're going to build something similar to that, but in an if statement. So I want users on my ride to be 1 meter tall. I don't need to specify it's 1 meter. I can just say height equals 1. In fact, if I said it was 1 meter, then that would no longer be a number. It would be a string and it wouldn't work. So height equals 1. I put a little comment on the top here so I understand that that's the height restriction in meters. So then I've got a little comment that says user input, and I'm printing to the console, as you can see down the bottom, that this is a ride height checker. Sometimes you'll see people put asterisks or arrows or something like that, just so you can see that it's like a title or a comment or something that the person needs to read. Hang on, let me just comment that out, and then you can see when I run it there. Okay, so you just get you get the things there. So just let me put the /n so we get a nice new line at the end. So when I run it, you can see it says it's a ride height checker. It's just like a little title on the top, and then the question is, how tall are you? And I've made that a variable equal to the user's input. So whatever I type in here then gets stored in user height, similar to the exercise we did previously. Now you can see if I type in here, it's very close. So either I can do what I did here and just put /n to give me a new line, or I can just put a space, couple of spaces at the end there, so it's not quite so close when I run it to the end of the sentence just there. Now, we want to do something, because once the user puts 66 in there and it gets stored in that user height variable, that number's now stored. So I can now do something with that. Now, I might want to, again, be a bit more specific here because we haven't told the user how we're measuring their height. And 66 meters, well, I mean, he's going to be bigger than the ride. So how do we do if statements? Well, we can either write it in a function or we can just write it here. So if user underscore height, so whatever's in the input. Now we just use the mathematical symbols that we already know and understand, such as greater than, less than, equal to, not equal to. And if you just Google Python operators, you'll find there's lots of different ones. Now what we have to be careful of is, because we use equals to define variables, if I use equals here, Python thinks I'm just defining another variable, so we use equals equals. And when you look at the list of Python operators, you'll see that you have plus equals, equals equals. If it's not equals, you use an exclamation and equals. So there's usually two of these that indicate some mathematical stuff is going on here. So if the user height equals 1, then they can go on the ride, which is fine. But what if they're taller than 1, well, it can still go on the ride. So we might want to change this to if it is bigger than, greater than, taller than, or is 1, then we can go on that ride. Okay, so we've defined our condition. If the user's height is greater than or equal to 1, so now we want a colon, and Python should have the indentation now, because we have to put the 4 spaces in, because that's just how Python works. So remember to do that. What we need to do now is tell it what to do if that's true. If the user height is 1, then what? Well, then we can print a message. So all we do now is we just say print inside brackets, inside quotes, you can ride. Okay, now if they are not bigger or equal to 1 meter in height, then they can't ride. So what we need to do now is we need to do something called else. Okay, else. So what do we do if that is false? Well, we can't ride. You're too short. So what we need to then do is print a different message. Print, again, same as we did before, open, close, bracket, and then we want the message to say you cannot ride. Okay, so let's see if it works. So we run it. How tall are you? I am 0.5 meters. Oh, got a problem. You can see here, I had to kind of think my way through why this code wasn't working. And you're going to have to do the same when you write your own little program. So because obviously less than 1 is going to be point something, it's going to be a decimal place, I've had to basically make sure that the user's height, when it's stored as a variable, is stored as a float. And all that means is it allows decimal numbers. Because you remember when we looked at this before, how tall are you in meters? The input is a string. So we've had to convert this to not an integer this time, because that's a whole number, but a float. So we can type in, and it allows and enables us to store anything less than 1, which is a decimalized number. So if I run this again, you'll see if I'm 1.2 meters, it still lets me ride. So another example of how that works in terms of, making sure you've got the right type as well. So have a go at that and see, and then maybe have a go at extending this out so you can actually put all this in a function, or maybe put the if statement in a function and then call it after this bit's appeared. Or maybe even leave the variable for height as it is and put all this into a function and have it all run, a number of times.